Welcome back to another episode of Learn with Dylan. Today, I have reached out to Caesar, who is an expert in communication, and I wanted to get him on here to learn how to become more confident in communication. I work in sales, which a large role is communication, and I can appreciate anyone who has great communication skills, and I really do believe that if you do have good communication skills, it can change your life. So welcome aboard, Caesar. It's great to have you on board.
Thanks, Dylan. Appreciate it, mate. This is great. We've been meaning to have this chat for a long time. It hasn't come about until recently. So thank you very much for reaching out, and thank you very much for taking the time to listen to what I've got to say and asking me questions, mate. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, the first question is, just if you can introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do, what you specialize in, and something that a mentor of mine has drilled into me. Why should people listen to you? So whenever you put content out, people don't know who you are. Why should they listen to you? So yeah, if you don't mind sharing all that.
Thanks, mate. Thanks. So, I've worked for large corporations in Australia and globally. I've worked for a Fortune 500 in North America, well, not North America, a North American company in Australia, in the Middle East, in Asia, in Europe. And one thing that I've learned through my journey is communication is powerful. It locks a lot of, not only opportunity, but also respect for that matter, respect for what you do and how you do it. And I learned that lesson really when I was in grade 7. When it was a long time ago. My parents came from Palestine. That's our background. They didn't know English. I'm from 6 brothers and sisters. I'm the youngest. And I did a speech for my grade 7 school captaincy application. And after the speech, this parent came up to me and said, "Oh, I guess your parents wrote that speech for you." And the reality was that hit home hard because they didn't know English well. And they didn't write it. And my brothers and sisters didn't write it. I wrote it. That lesson was that it was so impactful for whatever I said. I can't even remember what I said. I remember that parent saying to me, "Somebody else wrote it for you." So that taught me something. That taught me that, your messages, what people listen to, the way you communicate, people listen to. What you have to say, people listen to you. It's how you say it that's fundamentally important. And since then, I was very aware of what I say, how I say, who I say it to, when I say it, and what I'm saying. And a lot of people would look at me and say, "Caesar, you're pretty good at that. That was great. Where'd you get that idea from? Or how did you articulate that well?" And I keep saying, it doesn't come natural. You've got to practice, you've got to train for it. And since then, whether it's negotiating large agreements for large organizations, I'm talking multi-million-dollar agreements, or speaking to thousands of people in a public presentation or a public speech, I say to everybody, it comes with practice. It does not come natural. The moment you're able to do that, we'll listen.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I feel like with communication, as you've talked about on a lot of your content, it can open up doors. It
I
opens
believe
up,
so.
it
Absolutely.
opens up opportunities in life.
That's right.
Well, yeah, we'll jump straight into what we're going to talk about today. So the main topic I wanted to discuss is someone who might be shy and they want to improve their communication skills. Maybe they want to, ask for a pay rise. Maybe they want to just talk to more people and they don't have the confidence to just go and talk to a stranger. So this is mainly about, from shy to confident communicator. So I have sent Caesar a few core principles that I would like you to discuss. So I'll let you, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Thanks. So communication is for everybody. Everybody. Whether you're in sales, whether you're in a back office operation, whether you're a plumber, whether you're a personal trainer, whether you're at home and you just want to communicate with your partner, it is for everybody. And the reasons for everybody is because we do it every single day, right? One thing you've said, and that's the operative word, it's confidence, right? And building confidence in how you speak. Let me use this example. Let me draw parallels. It's like building strength in the gym. And you're probably thinking, man, what's speaking got to do with the gym? Hear me out, right? Because you don't get fit by accident. You train, right? You show up, you repeat. Communication, whether it's sales, public speaking, presentation skills, negotiating, whatever that communication is, it works the same way. In fact, it's like the gym you've never been taught to train in, right? And this is where you go from shy to confident, as you've said. I like to say it's when you go from invisible to unforgettable, right? You need to practice. You need to do those reps. And just like you train your body, you've got to train your voice. You've got to know what to say and when to say. And this is the problem. Most people never even do it, never invest in doing it. They never train themselves, right? A lot of people say, hey, Caesar, you're a great speaker. You must be born that way. It must come easy for you. I'll be frank, that's not true. You've got to practice. You've got to prepare. Let me give you a perfect example. And I say this all the time. You wouldn't expect to step into a soccer field or a footy field or into a boxing ring without ever practicing, right? You wouldn't. So why do we walk into interviews, meetings, presentations, pictures without ever training? And that's something we've got to do. Where the kicker is, I grew up in Australia. I grew up in schools here, primary, high school, university. The truth is, we were never taught to communicate. And think about that. When at school, did we ever have a program or a lesson or a class that taught us how to communicate, how to articulate, how to speak well, how to articulate our thoughts into words, not properly, not practically, never. So to get confidence in what you want to say or how you want to say it, you practice, man. Not just like you'd go to the gym, just like you'd get a PT or you'd get a coach. You got to do that. You got to invest in the time to do that. And that's what I do. I try to help people understand, A, what they're trying to achieve, and then train them with the right tools, the right gym equipment, with the right PT session, with the right equipment to be able to hit what they want to achieve, right? It's the same thing. We've never done it. And we never think about it like that.
No,
we never think, hey, I've got to invest in my training. But when I say, hey, you got to lose weight or you got to get fit or whatever it is, you're like, all right, I've got to go to the gym. I've got to go for a run. We need to shift our mindset. You go, well, I've got to invest in my coaching.
Okay. Well, what would be the 3 top principles that come to mind to improve your communication skills? We'll start with the first one. So what would that be?
So before I answer that question, what are the top 3 principles you're saying that help somebody achieve that level of confidence or communication? What you've just said there is really, it's a skill in itself. You said, what are the top 3? I love the rule of 3. I call it the golden rule of 3. Right, we're going to circle back to that later on. Why 3 is important. And what I want you to notice, and your listeners to notice, and your viewers to notice, is I always use the power of 3. And you'll hear me saying this, that, and the other, because that's repetition, and that sinks in. Right, so it's good that you use the power of 3. There's a skill that I don't know if you intended to do that or not, but a lot of people don't remember more than 3 things. Right, and in sales, a lot of people don't remember more than 3. They don't remember the facts. I'll remember the top 3 things, or what are the top 3? And even gold, silver, and bronze, they don't go to 4th, 5th, or 6th. Right, so the top 3 is very important. I always use the power of 3. Anyway, we're digressing here. Right, so what are the top 3 things? What are the top 3 things you know to better at what you want to do in the realm of communication? Now, you've got to first identify what's your objective. What am I trying to achieve? Is it better at sales? Am I trying to negotiate something? Is it public speaking? Do I have to do a presentation, or is it just general conversation that I want to get better at? So, when I'm with my friends, when I'm at a dinner party, I want to be able to tell a story, where people actually listen, they respect me, or people listen to me, they don't interrupt, or I'm not waffling, or I'm not, rambling. So that's the first thing. Number 1 is to identify what am I trying to achieve. Because like anything, any discipline, it can be quite large, right? So once we've identified that and say, okay, I've got a meeting coming up, usually I don't speak too well in meetings. I stay quite quiet in the meetings. My ideas don't get shared. They get overlooked. Or generally in a meeting, I waffle a little. I get anxious. I have an idea, but I don't, my voice is not loud enough, right? And they're all symptoms of an issue, right? So then once we've identified what we want to achieve, the example I'm giving you here is we're going to go into a meeting. We want to speak at a meeting, and we want to speak confidently. We want to share our ideas. And it's very simple. It's not rocket science. What I'd say is the second thing is to write down, in this instance, in this particular example, write down, and it applies in other stuff, what I'm trying to say. When you're actually writing down what you're trying to say, it's making you think about how to say it. You with me?
Yeah,
when you write it down,
articulate it.
How to articulate it. You're forcing yourself to write it on a piece of paper. And it's the one thing, you just got to think of the one thing I'm going to say in that meeting, right? And you write it down. And then you say it to yourself loudly. You repeat it loudly, and then you read that and go, "Hey, that actually doesn't really make sense," or that's rambling, or I'm waffling here. So you want to be able to bring that in a concise manner. And I keep saying, just focus on the one thing. Do something simple, the low hanging fruit. And once you've written it down, in a way where now you've had version 2 or version 3 of it. Practice it comfortably, not memorize. Remember, most people know their shit pretty well. Most people know they're subject matter experts in what they do, whatever it is that they do. They've been doing it for years. So you know your stuff. It's just articulating that. So you don't memorize it, you're just practicing how to say it. One thing, so that when you're in that meeting and the opportunity arises, you've rehearsed, you've practiced like that like you've been going to the gym, you've been doing those reps before you get in the boxing ring, right? You've learned how to spar, similar thing. And then in that meeting, you just got to say that one thing. You're going to be nervous. You're going to be anxious. Then when you keep repeating that, you get more comfortable with it. But there's a small example. So that's your second thing, right? And the third thing then is to reflect on that. And that's a hard thing to do, to reflect on something and go, well, how did I actually, and self-assess yourself. How did I perform? We're harsh critics on ourselves, right? We've got to be fair to ourselves. We're very harsh critics of ourselves. We go, well, how did I do? Could I have done it better? What should I have said better? And then you're going to repeat that a couple of times. So you get comfortable. There's one practical example that I can give somebody or anybody in going to a meeting. You're in sales, right?
Yeah.
All a myriad of opportunities or ways you can do things. And I love talking about sales, right? Because that's cool. And I've got this cool idea for sales, and I train people on sales, and I tell them stop selling. Sales is, but we're digressing again. Let's not digress. Right? Once we open these conversations, I don't stop, mate. Right? That's cool. It's exciting. We're helping.
Yeah, I love that, and I love how you're.
So there's an example.
Yeah, and I love how you're just focusing on that one thing, like, and you just writing it down. You're really cementing it into your brain, and you're like, okay, that's nothing else matters. I'm just going to focus on getting this one point across. So everything else doesn't matter. I've just got to focus on that one thing. So yeah, that's really insightful tips. Okay.
Yeah. And this is cool, right? I say you want to go from invisible to unforgettable, right? Now that's pretty extreme, but why I say that is because people a lot of times forget what you actually said, but what they remember is how they felt about it.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's why saying someone's name is so important. It makes you listen. Like if I say Caesar, straight away your ears are going to perk up a little bit more.
100%. I agree with you. Let me give you a specific example of that. I don't know if you watch news interviews with political pundits and analysts and world leaders. They always repeat the person's name in that interview, and they do that on purpose, to your point. So going back to that, people remember how they felt. Think about a movie that you've watched. You're not going to remember the lines or the specific details. You may be able to narrate the story at a very high level. What you remember is, hey man, that was a pretty damn good movie. I liked that. It made me feel emotional. It was exciting. You remember how you felt when you go to a sermon, whether it's a temple or mosque or a church. You generally forget what they said. Actually test that. Next time that happens, ask somebody, give me 3 things that you learned from that sermon or that lecture or whatever it is. And most people will scratch their head trying to remember 3 things. They'll remember 1, 2. If they're lucky, they'll stretch it to 3. But ask them, how was it? They'll be like, it was great. It motivated me. Right? It was boring. I didn't like it. So they remember how they felt about it. It's the same thing, right? The message you're conveying needs to be articulated in a way where it's purposeful.
Yeah, awesome. Love that. And one thing that I used to say all the time to people is to just, when you go to the shops, like start, like if you see it's a Troy behind the counter, say, hey, Troy, and they'll be like it makes them feel special. So using your name is so powerful. Awesome.
That's true. That is true.
So would you say those are the 3 tips that you said before?
In that context, absolutely. Right? Yeah. And why I use that example, it came to me because it's an everyday example. Most people that work, whatever environment it is that you work in, whether it's a corporate environment or in a retail, you're going to have your meetings. You're going to have it. And even when you're discussing it over a family dinner, think about what you're going to say. Even play it in your head a bit.
Yeah.
Have a crack at it. One thing with your friends. All right. You give it a shot, just that. And it applies for everything. If it's a sales pitch, think about that one thing that you think the customer's going to get. Write it down, practice it, rehearse it, and articulate it well. Because you don't want to ramble, you don't want to waffle, people lose interest. So that's a very, very generic yet very applicable rule that you can apply in anything that you do. right? And it's the rule of three. It's the three tips, and it works perfectly.
No, I really like that because everyone needs to voice, their ideas. A lot of people don't voice their ideas. And, one of your ideas could be a game changer, and you don't know if you don't talk about it, if you don't voice it out. And when you do voice it out, you might have a little epiphany, or you might have a realization. Someone else might say, "Oh, what about we do this?" And it leads to a different conversation. So, yeah, that's a really good tip. So focus on one, like write down what you're going to say, and you can do multiple versions of that. So you're getting really clear on, does that make sense? And then two, it's just focus on that one thing, and then just come back and have a look at everything and be like, okay, could I have done that better? Don't be too harsh on yourself, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Right. Yeah. And you want, so, think about what you're going to say, write it down, practice it, and reflect on it. Right.
Reflect on
and then you gradually,
better.
Improve upon it. You get better and better. And then the next time you think, okay, that worked well, let me try something else. It's not about being the loudest person in the room.
No, it's not.
It is not about that. Right.
It's just about, voicing your ideas. Like, everyone's ideas are important. If there is like something that you've been meaning to say it and write it down, as you mentioned, and just keep reflecting over it, and repetition, and you will get better. Awesome.
So let me share this too, because you've touched on a point. Yeah, I'm going to digress a little.
Yeah,
it's all related, and this conversation is very important. You've said something about people's views are important.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. Everybody's views, and I'm going to share some thoughts with you. So why do people not share their views?
They're scared.
Because they're not confident in articulating their views.
Exactly right.
Now, what are the symptoms of why aren't they confident in sharing their views? Because one, they feel that they might not sound smart. Two, that they might be dismissed. Three, they're anxious in speaking in certain environments, in certain circles, right? Or four, they don't want to look like they're a bit silly or they're a bit dumb, right? For whatever reason, sometimes you're in a meeting or you're in a conversation, you're like, I've got an idea, but I don't want to share that because people are going to think, people are going to think funny of me, so I'm not going to say anything, right? Or I don't know how to spit it out. So you want to keep it simple. Like I said, you apply that rule, play it in your head a bit, then share it, right? Why are views very important? I'm going to give you this example. I've got this phone in my hand, right? I love this example, right? Now, if I ask you, Dylan, what do you see? What do you see? You see a white phone. You can probably tell it's a Samsung. It's got 3 cameras. Now, I'm looking at the same phone. I'm going, no. I see something completely different. I see a blank screen. It's black. There's nothing on there except the date, the time, and the weather. So who's right, you or me? Right?
You're both right.
Then when I turn it around and I look at it from your point of view, exactly. When I look at it from your point of view, I'm going, okay, now I see what you see, and now you see what I see. So that's the power of different views, right? You're looking at it from a certain perspective, you see one thing, and I'm going, no, that's wrong. But the moment I start looking at it from a different perspective or a different view, I can see a different view. And this is what I say, the ability for you to communicate or to sell or to negotiate or to present, what fundamentally that is, it's sharing your worldview so that others can see it
exactly right,
appropriately, effectively, and be able to act upon it. Right? That's the killer there. That's the kicker there.
I 100% agree. Like, everyone sees the world differently. Everyone sees each other differently through our beliefs, through how we're brought up. And someone might say something to you and it just goes over your head. But if they were a good communicator and they broke it down in a good way, maybe using an analogy that made sense for them, it would give them that light bulb moment and they would be able to relate to that situation.
Absolutely.
So it's
and if we circle back to what we already said, that analogy.
Go on.
So how do I articulate to the world that communication is fundamentally important to practice? How do I do that? The analogy I use, it's like going on a soccer field or a footy field or in a boxing ring. You don't just go there. You got to warm up before. You got to put your shin pads on. You got to put your gloves on. You got to know the game. You got to know the rules of the game, right? You got to warm up before you get in there. Now you're not going to kick the first, ball and you're going to, curl it and score like bending it like Beckham. You ain't going to do that. With time, you're going to get pretty good at it. And that's the analogy, like we said. That's you got to give those analogies. You got to give those examples, those parables, so people can relate to it.
Exactly right.
That's the power of communication.
You got to talk in their language. What's going to make sense to them? Awesome.
So hold that thought, right? So when you talk about their language, why is that important? And let's break that down. because it is important. Why do you talk about, you got to talk their language. The question then is, you're absolutely right. Whose language are you talking in? So one of the things you've got to do, and before you present, sell, negotiate, communicate, tell a story, one thing you got to do is you got to say, who's my audience?
Yes, exactly right.
Because then you got to talk their language.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I present to executives all the time. I coach executives. I talk at that level. So I've got to know these guys want it quick. They want it fast. They want the executive summary. No fluff, just straight detail. This is why pros and cons, my recommendation. Right. My level of vocabulary is relatively complex and deep. You get it. When I'm talking to uni students, first year uni students, I ain't talking the same way.
I know.
Different demographic, different age, different mindset, different environment. I've got to talk their language. As a good communicator, salesperson, whatever, you've got to go, well, who's my audience? And what language do I need to adjust to for them to get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. It's like a large majority of what I do is talking to people and sales. And a lot of people I talk to are actually mums, and I've noticed that they do use certain words. So I'm starting to use certain words. So it is so important. You've got to know your audience, as you mentioned, and you've got to, speak and use the words that they would speak, and they're going to relate to you more. And the more they can see you as relatable, the more they're going to trust you as well.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Exactly.
All right. Well, better wrap it up before it cuts us off. So I really appreciate you joining me today, Caesar. For anyone who wants to reach out to you, where would they contact you, and what are you specializing in at the moment?
Yeah. Well, let me start with what we specialize in. So we give one-on-one coaching on communication, sales, negotiation, presentation skills, public speaking skills. I call that combined communication for what it's worth, combined communication. But also I deliver training to, teams, again, whether they're sales teams, collecting teams, procurement teams, administration teams, because communication is fundamentally important. So individuals and teams, corporate sales or otherwise, I do one-on-one coaching and training and the like. Watch this space, because I'm going to be releasing in a few months a series of online training courses, but these training courses are cool. They're very different. They're not like your standard fluff stuff. They're adaptable, they're applicable. You can literally walk away with tools you can apply immediately. And where to contact me at the moment, you go to my Instagram, Caesar _A. That's my handle right in there.
I'll link it in the show notes.
That'd be great. That'd be great. They can follow, they can DM me, they can share, and things will be coming out in the next few months to keep the progression and keep it going along. All right.
Awesome. All right. Well, I really appreciate your time. I felt like that was a great podcast. And for everyone listening, keep learning, and I'll chat to you next time.
Dylan, you've been fantastic, mate. Thank you very much. And thanks to your viewers and your listeners for taking the time to listen to what you've got to say and what I've got to say. Greatly appreciated. Look forward to doing it again soon. We can talk for hours on this.
Yeah, 100%. All right. See you later.
Very good. Cheers, mate. Thank you very much. Thanks, mate.